germination of your seeds will be affected by light, temperature and moisture, but by far the most important ingredient is the growing medium. But which one is best for you to use to sow your seeds? To find out, I'm going to run an experiment and test the germination rates of different seed starting mixes, composts and other growing media to find out which is best for you to use in your garden. I'm going to be using these seed module trays and I'll assign one vegetable seed to each tray. Then I'll fill each column in every tray with a different growing medium so that we can test each soil side by side. First up is Rocket Grow Seed Compost, an organic, peat-free and coir-free compost made in Somerset that's specifically designed for sowing seeds. You can feel it's quite thick and more clay-like than other composts, and you can see they've added small pieces of sand or grit for drainage. In the second row, I'm going to use Silver Grow Organic, an all-purpose organic and peat-free compost that can be used all over the garden, including for starting seeds. Silvergrow is a more premium brand, it's endorsed by the RHS and it's quite commonly recommended online, but it's a compost that I've not tried yet. In row 4, I'm going to be using Western New Horizon. They've changed their branding since I bought this bag, but this is another organic, peat-free, all-purpose compost. Having sampled a couple of dozen bags, the texture is quite variable, but it feels more like peat compost and it holds on to water. Next up is Dalesford Seed Compost. This is an exciting contender because it's made of sheep's wool and bracken using a traditional Lake District recipe. It has a fine and loose texture which I expect will be ideal for sowing seeds. And in the last row, I'm going to test coconut coir. Now this isn't really a compost as most cocoa coir bricks won't contain any nutrients. But the aeration is spectacular, fungal issues are non-existent and germination rates tend to be very, very high. In each tray, I'm going to fill up the cells to the same level and use a different compost in each row. I'm going to do this very slowly so I don't let any of the wrong compost fall into the wrong column. In the bottom half of the trays, I'm going to mix in some perlite, which some people use to improve aeration, and I suspect it will improve germination rates for some of these composts. In each tray, I'm going to sow a different kind of seed, but I'm going to sow the same number of seeds in each cell. I'm going to sow 5 radish seeds, 5 lettuce seeds, 5 onion seeds, 5 tomato seeds, 5 pepper seeds, and 1 squash seed per cell, and I'm going to try and sow them at their recommended depths, with one exception, the squash seed, which I'll sow at half the depth of the cell. Then I'm going to place each of my cell trays into a seed tray filled with water so that each growing medium can soak up the water. This bottom watering approach will give the most consistent application of water within each tray, meaning that the compost is the only variable. I'll then cover the trays with a propagator lid and give the seeds the time that they need to germinate. This month has been full of excitement, but in some cases, complete boredom. While I've been busy working on other videos, the seeds have been germinating at either unexpectedly fast paces or concerningly slow ones, with no in between. But now it's time to tally up the data and find out which compost is best for germinating seeds, starting with the radishes. Some of these started to germinate in literally 2 days, which was faster than I could clear out this room and set up the lights, which means that some of them have gone a bit leggy. But ignoring that, even just by looking top down on the tray, you can already see that there are some big differences between the composts. The first is that the Rocket Grow seedlings are much smaller, as they germinated much later and they seem to grow slower. You can also see that the Dalesford plants are much bigger and have all grown some full-size true leaves, while the Coir, Westland and Silvergrow have their true leaves, but they're smaller and much younger. If we count up the number of seeds that germinated in each cell, and we count the total number of plants in each column, then you can see that germination was strong in the formulated seed composts, with Rocket Grow taking a firm lead over the rest, followed closely by Dalesford, Silvergrow and Coir. If we move on to the tomatoes, we find it's a similar story. just by eye, we can see that the rocket grow ones have only just pushed their way out of their seeds, and again they look much smaller too. And again we can see that a lot of the seedlings in the Dalesfoot compost, and maybe one or two in the Westland and Silver Grow columns, have started to develop their true leaves. But if we count up the columns again to find out how many plants have germinated, we get a much clearer picture of which compost was best. Dalesfoot was the standout winner, with 75% of seeds germinating, placing it miles ahead of the pack. And if we perform the same analysis with the lettuce, we find the results are pretty similar too, with the rocket grow growing slowest, the Dalesfoot having the largest plants, but good germination in the Silver Grow, Rocket Grow and Coir. But if we take a look at the results of the perlite mix, we find that germination was a little bit better. Already we have a pretty clear idea of which compost is going to do best, which is very convenient because the rest of the tests had some problems. I had originally planned on making this video last year, so all of these seeds are about a year old. I painstakingly sowed my seeds at the recommended planting depth, but of the 200 onion seeds that I sowed a month ago, only a handful actually germinated. We also had some really patchy germination with the squashes, and because we only sowed 40 seeds, the stats are basically unusable. And that just leaves the peppers. I sowed 5 seeds into each of the 8 cells across 5 different composts, and a grand total of 0 germinated. Which makes me think that this was either from a dud batch or that the packet was damaged in transit. But when I messaged the seed company only 20 minutes later, they offered me a full refund despite ordering 13 months ago. But for the seeds that did manage to germinate, it's time to grow them on in their own containers until it's warm enough to plant them outside. However, this time of year there really isn't enough light to grow them indoors without them going leggy, which is why I ran this experiment here to find out if it was possible to grow healthy tomato seedlings under these cheap grow lights. So for those of you who want to give your plants the best possible start, I'll see you up there, and as always, happy gardening.